Hey YouTube, I'm Max Mosley, and I have a video response directed at Bering, who's made a reaction video about vegan virtue signaling, where he uses some ad hominem and logical fallacies in an attempt to reconcile his dietary choices due to feeling threatened by a non-SJW vegan. And beyond that, Vegan Gains also made a response which was a little bit on the crazier side of the vegan spectrum.
Justify morally abhorrent behavior. How about I just pull out my gun?
And that is not what I want to offer you, Bering. I want to give you a better debate than that. And because I think you deserve a better debate than that, and I think you can offer a better debate than that. So let's get down to it.
Many people conflate veganism with social justice.
So the gist of the video Bering is reacting to is about how social justice should not be associated with veganism, which I agree to a certain extent, but I also feel that if you are pro-social justice, then you should be for veganism due to the immense problems animal agriculture creates for humans, the biosphere, and the ecosystem in general. And if you are truly against rainforest destruction, man-made climate change, and species endangerment, then it would be fucking hypocritical to not be a vegan as an SJW. Just saying.
I don't have a problem with the notion that veganism isn't predicated on leftist think or leftist ideology, but a high proportion of vegans do tend to lean to the left.
Bering is right here. Most vegans do indeed lean to the left for reasons I just mentioned, and that leftists tend to subscribe to compassionate practices, or practices they feel are compassionate, which unfortunately bridge too far into authoritarianism.
There's nothing outrageous about being a right-leaning vegan who doesn't believe in God.
He's right here as well. Nothing wrong with being a right-leaning vegan, such as myself, and I don't mind challenging my side of the political spectrum. I think it's fun.
Murder is a crime where a person kills another person without justification. Killing an animal for consumption isn't murder.
I think you're right here, and I disagree with Vegan Gains as well. Killing animals is not murder, even though some people might disagree when it comes to their favorite animals, as you can see in this article about dogs. However, even those beloved pets are treated just like chickens in parts of China, and it's just as wrong for someone in our position in the West to tell the Chinese they need to stop eating dogs while we eat animals smarter than dogs, such as pigs. Intentional animal killing is typically prosecuted under animal cruelty laws when they are killed or maimed without the intention of being utilized for food. However, informed people understand that within factory farm environments, this same type of torture can take place without any oversight or repercussion at all.
And I wouldn't say we do it just for our taste pleasure either.
Let's say you have the option for a block of tofu and a block of ham, like Spam, both having the same protein value. If you must kill a pig for the ham option, could you argue that the death was necessary if you had the option for something else that didn't involve that? Well, only if you're arguing for flavor, which you claim you are not doing.
We do it because that's what we've done since before we were even humans, around 2.5 million years ago.
And here we see you move straight into an appeal to tradition fallacy, which has nothing to do with biological necessity in the current era.
So while it's true that we do like the taste of meat, we don't slaughter animals just for our taste pleasure.
Right, you also do it out of convenience, which has occurred due to the popularity of the tradition, in which meat abundance has been seen as a sign of wealth for millennia.
Any more than lions hunt and kill prey for their taste pleasure. It's just what we do.
99% of the time, you are not hunting or killing anything yourself. You are not an actual bear, as you know. It doesn't take much hunting to walk into the grocery store and find a plastic-wrapped slab of meat to put in your cart.
Has anyone really ever said, "but bacon," and expected it to constitute an argument?
Yes, dude. Lots of people use that all the goddamn time. Most are trolls. It's seen as a way to trigger vegans, and there really is a genuine cult of personality built around that sodium sugar-infused backstrap meat. In fact, many SJWs also love bacon to the point where they write article after article about how awesome it is. You don't see it as often because you use better arguments than that, and because you aren't vegan.
Because if they have, maybe you should stop debating retards.
Why? Half of your channel is built on that premise. Okay for you to do it, but not vegans?
Apparently there's around 7.3 million vegetarians in the United States alone.
Actually, the most recent figures I could find was for 2014, which had it at about 16 million, half of which being vegan. But I don't count vegetarians in the same law, as they still contribute to mass animal slaughter and unregulated environmental degradation.
7.3 million people is many people.
And that's still a small number of people, considering just how much we are destroying our ecosystem with these practices. And even destroying our internal ecosystem through the overuse of antibiotics in animal agriculture, of which 80% of the US supply goes to the meat industry.
And it is logical to slaughter animals because they're a lot more difficult to eat when they're alive.
Probably because if you tried to bite into a live one, they'd likely tear you a new asshole since we didn't develop any kill-centric hunting adaptations like many carnivores and omnivores. Now, I'm not saying that we're not omnivores. I think almost every animal can be considered an omnivore. You can even find deer eating meat. And I don't think anyone will dispute the fact that deer are herbivores by definition.
Many people agree, unless you're a psychopath.
And he's off with his first moral ultimatum, which totally doesn't make you sound like a massive SJW.
I agree. He shouldn't be implying people are psychopaths just because they eat meat. He should just call them what they are and what we were, uninformed.
What goes on in factory farms is absolutely horrible.
Yeah, I do agree, it's heartbreaking.
I agreed it was heartbreaking too, and I still ate it. When I hunted animals, I found that sad too, but I thought I understood the necessity, until I realized that nope, we were just blindly following a tradition that has little use in the modern world or human nutrition. And since you find it heartbreaking, does that mean you try to avoid factory-farmed meat? How do you even know what is and isn't? It's almost impossible to tell because I tried to do the same as a meat eater and failed. Why? Because 97% to 99% of meat is factory-farmed, with beef being 78%. Trying to avoid that and still afford food is next to impossible in many cases, at least as a meat eater. Which is why you can think of veganism and plant-based diets as a general boycott of these industries. You can then eat meat on occasion when someone has maybe killed an animal on a hunting trip, or you know you're getting it from one of those rare happy farms. But I assume you couldn't do that either because what it really comes down to is having enough discipline to explore and experiment with other food options, and I don't think you're ready for that. You could prove me wrong though.
You didn't need to shame me into that answer.
You're right. Vegans, stop shaming people about it. Even if it is shameful, in your opinion, we cannot project our insecurities about our own past behaviors onto others who don't have all the information that we now do. Shaming people over something they don't fully understand is not going to win people over. I've won people over, and never by shaming. There's a lot to know and understand in order to fully grasp why someone would want to go plant-based or vegan, and why they wouldn't want to do it instantly at the whim of someone telling them or commanding them to from a position of moral superiority. And I don't think it can be done in one conversation or even in one day. It's quite difficult to rewire our neural pathways, and it gets exponentially more difficult with age.
That could be used to justify anything. Well, we've been doing X for so long, so that means it's justified. Rape, murder, that's justified.
Yeah, it's not really the same though, is it? In that rape and murder haven't been a vital part of our diet for 2.5 million years?
That's correct. But they have been a part of our survival, as proto-humans did both of these things with enormous regularity. That doesn't mean we needed to commit those atrocities to get to where we are today, but we did, and here we are. Likewise, we didn't need to consume meat to get to where we are today, but we did, and here we are. I know you will disagree with me on the latter, but I'll debunk you on that point next.
We've got bigger brains and therefore more brain power than most animals. But big brains use lots of energy. Did you know that the human brain uses about 20% of your body's energy at rest? At least double that of most other animals. And do you know how we've been getting that energy for the last 2.5 million years? By eating other animals.
Wrong. Brain size doesn't correlate with brain power. Studies have shown ravens to be just as smart as chimps, despite ravens having extremely tiny brains. Why? Because what's more important is neuronal density and structure. The reason our brain uses more energy is indeed due to more neuronal density, but more specifically, the largest number of neurons in the cerebral cortex out of any other animal. The TED Talk you got that info from makes a valid claim that the reason we were able to acquire such vast amounts of neurons is from cooking our food, which offers the ability to acquire more calories as food becomes softer. Now, while cooking plants always makes them softer, the same is not true with meat. Cooking can make tough meat more tender due to the gelatinization of connective tissues, but it makes tender meat more tough, which is why prime choice lean cuts are often preferred to be eaten on the rare side. No one wants to be chewing a steak bite for 15 minutes, not even on your steak night. Well, some people do. Due to these facts, it is obvious that cooking meat to increase calorie intake through softening is not nearly as consistent as cooking plants to increase calorie intake. And this is the thesis upon which your argument rests. On top of that, it still makes more sense that cooked plants were essential to neuronal growth because plants are our easiest source of glucose, which is converted into glycogen in the liver, our brain's preferred fuel source. more than anything. And when you cook down fibrous plants, you are able to get more glucose calories in the same volume as raw plants. And not only does meat not have any significant amounts of essential nutrients, besides protein, but if you want to get some, you'll have to eat it raw, like the Eskimos, who were only able to survive in the Arctic by eating raw meat, which also gave them heart disease and parasites, according to autopsies done on the Utqiagvik mummies 500 years later. The advent of cooking plants is also consistent with the disuse of our appendix, which used to act as a secondary stomach which helped us break down plant fibers more easily. As we began cooking, the use of this organ became less necessary and thus less utilized. All meat did for us was provide extra calories. It wasn't some magic thing that made our brains grow, as you know. It helped us perhaps have more leisure time to utilize the glucose cooked plants gave us and come up with new ideas and thought patterns.
So if you're worried about protein, just look to those foods.
Or I could just keep looking to meat.
If you want to kill your body unnecessarily and support an industry killing the planet, sure.
But to just sit back and say bacon, though, and say all this other nonsense.
Seriously, who are these people sitting back and saying bacon and all this other nonsense?
Trolls. They're trolls, and they do exist. And some are genuine bacon fans. BuzzFeed.
And who the fuck are you to tell anyone else that it's unnecessary for them to eat the food that their ancestors have been eating for thousands of generations?
He's a person on the internet sharing an opinion just like you. It doesn't matter who he is, and appealing to tradition does not make your argument so sacred that others cannot challenge it. And according to science, meat is unnecessary. Not only does the American Dietetics Association say this, that appropriately planned vegetarian diets, including total vegetarian or vegan diets, are healthful, nutritionally adequate, and may provide health benefits in the prevention and treatment of certain disease, and that well-planned vegetarian diets are appropriate for individuals during all stages of the life cycle, including pregnancy, lactation, infancy, childhood, and adolescence, and for athletes. But the longest living population in the U.S. are the Loma Linda Adventists, vegans, and vegetarians. How many 102-year-old heart doctors do you know that still mow their lawn and drive while proudly stating it's impossible for them to get a heart attack?
How is your health? Oh, superb. I haven't got an acre of pain.
The great-grandfather believes his plant-based diet plays a big part in all this.
If your blood cholesterol is under 150, your chances of having a heart attack are pretty small. Now, my blood cholesterol is 117. There's no chance of me having a heart attack.
People are living and surviving quite well without meat. To claim that meat is in any way necessary for the human body to be efficient and survive is completely false.
Look, I think there's some horrendously cruel practices in place at some of these factory farms.
But yet you'll still financially support it.
I'm all for demanding drastic industry reforms.
Yet you won't name any of those or show people how they can help institute those reforms.
Even if it means a drastic price increase for the end consumer.
You're aware of the results of anti-factory farm legislation.
But I don't think you're going to get anywhere by demanding people give up meat and poultry altogether. It's just not going to happen.
And you're absolutely right. And what people should actually do is cut down their meat consumption as much as they can and save meat for special occasions, instead of treating it as the centerpiece of nearly every meal.
Is actually murdering billions of animals every single year.
No, we're not. We're slaughtering billions of animals every single year. Learn the definition of murder.
It may not be technically murder, but it is a premeditated act of killing against an animal who has no agency to evade its destined punishment for simply existing. Unlike hunting, which actually gives an animal a right to its own natural agency to resist. In a slaughterhouse, especially in a factory farm setting, the animal has no agency to escape or resist, and animal cruelty laws are ever rarely enforced, much less the breaking of those laws ever investigated, because who cares? The animal is going to be food anyway. If someone is coming from the point of view that animals are not necessary for sustenance, a view proven by science and literally millions of examples, then you can understand why some people may feel this way. I don't call it murder myself, but I will consider you a pussy-ass bitch if you've never killed an animal yourself, cleaned it, and ate it. And even if you don't care about the morality of killing animals, the billions of animals we raise to feed billions of people requires 34 to 76 trillion gallons of fresh water in the U.S. and over 40% of the entire world's grain supply, a food source that has a much greater shelf life than meat and is far more nutritionally significant. Except for corn. Fuck corn. I don't think any reasonable person would think that 2,800 pounds of grain to make 490 pounds of food is at all a model of food efficiency.
We're more than capable of thinking logically and consistently.
You are, but not when you don't have the full facts to make an informed argument. And you don't on this subject, I'm sorry. So maybe stick to commentary on feminism and social justice, as I will logically and consistently tear down your arguments every time because you don't have any to make that aren't appeals to tradition.
Anyway, didn't you just tell us that many vegans are irrational nitwits? But here you are to help us think logically and consistently. I'm starting to get the impression that you think we're all retards.
Many vegans are irrational nitwits. Many people in general are irrational nitwits. At least vegans are irrational nitwits who aren't adding to the destruction of our biosphere by financially supporting the #1 cause of ocean dead zones, the #1 cause of species extinction, the #1 cause of methane pollution, and the #1 user of antibiotics, and the #1 cause of rainforest destruction.
It's not immoral when a spider kills a fly, or when a bird kills a worm, or when a cat kills a bird. And it's not immoral when people kill a chicken or a cow, as long as we're not complete cunts about it.
Did the spider pick the fly up from the grocery store? Did the bird grab his to-go order from the local deli? Did the cat sleep on the couch and online order fresh bird? No, because those animals aren't depending on industrialized slaughter. Well, the indoor cat might be, but only as a result of human domestication. Don't appeal to nature if your actions are not within the realm of natural order, such as this facade industrial civilization has placed over the practice of animal slaughter, which you try to make equivalents of. It is far different than hunting an animal in nature and killing it yourself. Quit acting like it's the same thing. Quit acting like you're an actual bear and you're going out and killing prey with your claws and teeth. You're not doing that. It's not the same thing. Quit acting like it is.
Now, if that triggers you and you're in the anti-social justice camp, the anti-social justice school of thought, well then, maybe you should reconsider your position.
Reconsider my position on the anti-social justice camp or eating animals?
I think it's obvious he's talking about eating animals. Come on, dude.
Because a lot of people's reactions to veganism are kind of social justice warrior-esque. They get triggered.
No, they don't get triggered. What they do is they bring shitty arguments. What they do is appeal to tradition. What they do is try to defend their bad habits that are destroying the ecosystem and their own bodies.
And I emphatically assure you again, I think logically about everything.
Yes, thanks to your advanced prefrontal cortex, which runs mainly on glycogen, which is most efficiently converted from glucose, which cooking allowed us to get more of. Now you just need more information to think logically about plant-based diets instead of offering knee-jerk fallacies devoid of it. I'm not saying everyone needs to go vegan either. I'm saying everyone needs to be better informed about what plant-based diets are and how they are helpful. Not only what you're doing to your body, but what you're doing to the planet and the animals you don't want tortured before the slaughter.
People from both sides, vegetarians, meat eaters, vegans, we can all at least agree on something: simple, consistent logic.
Mate, if we're calm, rational, and logical, then we don't go hanging around with crazy fucking people who want us to die. For fuck's sake.
No, we are trying to keep you from dying and keep our ecosystem from dying. Yes, many vegans are extreme.
Boo-hoo, the vegan made me feel so bad about eating meat. How dare you? You're a vegan extremist.
But we're dealing with an extreme problem. Thanks to animal agriculture, bacteria are now resistant to last resort antibiotics and can pass that gene to any other bacterium. MCR1 gene was created by giving colistin, our last resort antibiotic, to chickens and pigs in China for 10 years. Now it has spread across the globe. You're welcome to mix your microbiome with the microbiome of antibiotic-resistant animals, but I'll pass.
And let's make veganism great.
Well, Bering, I hope I was able to give you a different perspective than this person gave you, and that you're able to understand that plant-based diets and veganism mean much more to humanity and civilization than being simply predicated on animal welfare. And I hope one day we can debate, because I would love to have the opportunity to give you a scientific perspective on the subject. I'm not going to call you a psychopath. I'm not going to tout my moral superiority. I'm a former hunter and have killed plenty of animals myself. I'm mainly doing this as a health thing. We all understand that they are being killed in multitudes of different ways, many of them horrific. And what keeps us from even caring slightly about that is because we think we need meat, and things that you make little of, such as taste, as well as the issue of convenience. Which is why most people aren't hunting animals, not only because they lack the skills, but also the fact that most meat eaters couldn't stomach taking the life of an animal. But my main point is that things change, civilization has changed, and science has shown meat to not be necessary as we once thought it was. So let's have an honest conversation about that instead of debating one another with logical fallacies on both sides. Sayonara.
I feel like such a fucking badass when I eat steak.